Just an absolutely gut-wrenching loss for Ohio State here at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. This is the Lantern Sports post-game show. I'm your host, Casey Smith. Joining me is Jacob Benge and Gabe Burggraf. Ohio State comes up just short, losing 42-41 to the Georgia Bulldogs, who will be facing off against the TCU Horned Frogs in the national championship just over a week from today. Ohio State, their season's over, though, and Jacob, sort of the elephant in the room. Ohio State, they had a chance to drive down and win it and, punch their ticket to the national championship at SoFi Stadium, but they just came up just a little bit too short with that missed field goal at the end.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before. Being one of the longest field goals in Noah Ruggles' career, all those circumstances. But, I got to talk with a lot of, Steel Chambers, Tommy Eichenberg, Jim Knowles after the game. And for Ohio State to get up and play its best football when it needed to after the back-to-back Michigan losses, to get up and play to the underdog mentality at this stage at the CFP, they're proud of that. They're proud of the work they've done. We saw Steel Chambers get emotional after the game, and it was the sum of all the parts. The missed field goal, of course, like you mentioned, is the big one. But like we saw, Ohio State had to lead in the very last minute. Ohio State gave it up and gave it a try with the field goal try, and we heard C.J. Stroud 100% would do it again. So Ohio State in this game needed to play its best football, and it did, and it showed up despite the loss. For Ohio State, this is important going forward. Now, on paper, it's probably not, but Ohio State played its best football when it needed to.
I think it's crazy. Not a lot of people expected this to be the barn burner that it was. Coming down to that kick at the very last second, it looked early on like it might be whoever gets the ball last is going to win the game, and it almost turned out that way. But, a 50-yard attempt would have been a career long for Ruggles, Noah Ruggles, the place kicker, graduate at Ohio State. And, they had a shot. They had a chance. They went for a couple plays, a couple passes to try to get a couple more yards. They couldn't do it. That's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Sometimes the kick goes wide left. You said they came a little bit short. They were just a little bit left today. They won the game for 59 minutes, and they gave it up at the very end in the last minute, and they just couldn't get it back in the time they had.
Right, but one guy that laid it out all on the line for Ohio State, C.J. Stroud. 15 for 19, 238 yards, multiple touchdowns. He threw for over 4 today. Just absolutely gutsy performance, and he really got it done with his legs as well. Really setting up on that final drive. He got them in position with, a 20-yard scramble or so, 20 plus. So, he was able to set them up, and he did everything in his power to win. And Ryan Day praised in the post-game press conference just CJ's will and just sort of his grit and tenacity over the previous month, in which Ohio State said they put in 1,500 reps in bowl preparation. 1,500 reps to get ready for this Georgia Bulldogs team.
Show.
Exactly, and because, like Jacob was saying, they were playing their best football, and that started with C.J. Stroud at the top.
Absolutely, and that run you're talking about, I was watching it, and I was like, get down, because, if the ball comes out there, the game is over. But, you talk about the grit and tenacity. He takes the hit. He shields his body off. And, the Buckeyes had a chance there because of that. But at the end of the day, it was just too much from Stetson Bennett. You talk about C.J. Stroud. One mistake in this game, one turnover altogether. The Buckeyes didn't commit one. They didn't give one up. Stetson Bennett gave one up. Steel Chambers took one, stole one, some would say. But it really just set up this Ohio State offense to keep rolling. The thing we also need to look at is Ohio State had multiple leads of 10 plus points or more, and they just couldn't get it. They couldn't put their foot on the neck of this Georgia Bulldogs defense. Whether you say it's championship effort and that experience to keep fighting, that defense got a couple stops when it needed to, and Ohio State could have put this game away and put them to bed.
I think one point to me that really sticks out is the play for C.J. Stroud. I remember saying after the Northwestern game, some people may not see him as a Heisman contender anymore because he didn't run enough. But if you remember, he had a 40-plus yard run that set Ohio State up there at the goal line. In this game, when Ohio State and C.J. Stroud needed to show up, he showed up. He showed up, and he proved that he's the Heisman contender going against another Heisman contender in Stetson Bennett. And I felt that they matched each other really, really well, of course.
And we can't talk about C.J. Stroud without talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. He had over 100 yards in this game, 2 touchdowns, and I mean, was that a targeting call? Was that not a targeting call, Jacob? What'd you see from your vantage point?
In real time, I didn't think it was a targeting call because a play like that, the ball's up high in the air, you don't think it's a targeting call. But then after the replay, you can see, what kind of, but, it was more shoulder. And, post game, getting to see just around there and things like that, it just, probably was a hard hit.
Right, and Ryan Day said post game that he needs to see the replay before having a definitive judgment. Marvin Harrison Jr. told ESPN's Pete Thamel that he's good. So Ryan Day was saying it's kind of hard to get a concussion without getting hit in the head. And it just happens so fast in real time that it's sort of a bang-bang play, and that's why they have sort of the review for that targeting call, which Ryan Day said not having Marvin Harrison Jr. in that game really changed the game plan and sort of deterred Ohio State's offense a little bit.
And I think, speaking to that, Ohio State played its best and played up. We saw Xavier Johnson play up. We saw Lemeka Egbuka play up. Mitch Rossi, when Cade Stover exited the game there in the first half, really changed things there over in the tight end department because, like I was saying this week, I felt like Cade Stover's over-the-middle catches, his physicality to want to go into contact when he has the ball because he's played on that defensive side of the ball, probably changed things as well. So to lose two of your big receivers like that offensively, and Ohio State still hung around.
Ohio State still hung around. It was thanks in large part to Emeka Egbuka and Julian Fleming making some big catches, toe taps on the sideline. But you talked about Cade Stover, left the game. ESPN reported that it was a trip to the hospital for him tonight with some back tightness and potential back spasms was the report. So hope all is well with him because he could potentially be an NFL prospect. But that just takes away another threat. This Ohio State offense, once you lose Cade Stover, you can't afford to lose anybody else. And then your best player on offense, outside of C.J. Stroud, some would say, leaves the game, and you still put up 41 points in this game is incredible. C.J. Stroud had a heck of a night, and it was fun to see Ryan Day animated on the sideline, going crazy, whether it was a positive play or a negative play, really just showing the demeanor that they are having fun, but they are playing to win the game. That kind of lacked a little bit at times in that Michigan game. No life in your home stadium is something that doesn't happen that often, and it happened against Michigan. But the Buckeyes, the crowd was remarkably closer in 50-50-ish of the fans, considering Georgia is about an hour away. But they really fed off the energy in here, and it seemed like they were ready to play in Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah, and you talk about that crowd factor. One thing that really would have taken out the Georgia crowd is that potential fake punt. You saw it there in the second half. Ohio State, they were up 2 scores at that point, and they were going for the throat. And it was a play that they tried to run against Michigan where they direct snap into Mitch Rossi, and Tommy Eichenberg's the lead blocker. They execute it in this game with Kirby Smart sprinting down the sideline. He saw that look, and he sprinted down the sideline, got to the referee just in the nick of time, and gets the timeout called. And that really took the wind out of Ohio State's sails because now Georgia, they're alert to that, so they have to punt it away. And unfortunately, when you're up 2 scores and you're potentially going up for another touchdown drive, I mean, this game came down just to the final seconds. If Ohio State takes another couple minutes off the clock, maybe Georgia comes up just a little bit short because they don't have enough time to take that lead there at the end. So I think that was sort of the turning point in this game.
Well, and you talk about it, it was the second half. It was about 8-9 minutes to go. So, they had the ball. Where'd they have the ball? About their own 30, 40?
Right, it was right around their own 35.
And the thing that happened was Georgia caught up, and Ohio State, it felt like they knew that they had to keep scoring, and it was through the air that they pressed that. And the running game kind of went out of it. And at that point, the clock is stopping constantly for incompletions. It just adds another factor in. And that's what you can't do against Stetson Bennett and this offense that just had pinpoint accuracy. The defense played, I think it has to be their best game of the year defensively, but they gave up that long bomb on a Lathan Ransom blown coverage. The guy just snuck by him, and he lost him, and he was just gone. He was about 20, 25 yards downfield without anybody near him, and that's one of those explosive plays Jim Knowles talked about that you just can't have if you are a championship team. And in his first year, it seems like he did a pretty good job of containing this good, very elite Georgia offense.
Yeah, I mean, you can sort of point to that. I don't think they put their best foot forward in the time that it mattered. So down the stretch, Ohio State, they were giving up like those too many explosives, like you were saying. In the first half, it was a completely different script. You saw Zach Harrison getting in the backfield with Javonte Jean-Baptiste getting sacks. There was a play I remember Ronnie Hickman coming across the field and breaking up a pass. And I looked at Jacob and I was talking about that silver bullet defense. That's sort of the mantra that this Ohio State defense really wants to have, and something that they've really been doing some soul searching for in these previous couple years, ever since Jeff Hafley left for the Boston College job, ever since 2019. So Ohio State, they were playing that silver bullet defense, and that's why Georgia only had 24 points. And that just all went right out the window, and it just came down to it where they just couldn't get the stop that they needed when they needed it. And that's sort of what this came down to. It looked like Ohio State was going to lead another heroic drive, just like the Rose Bowl a season ago, just with a little over a minute in that game as well. But they just come up a little bit too short. Ohio State, they lose 42-41 as Georgia is going to the national championship against TCU, and it's another long offseason in Columbus. A lot of pieces going to be moving around. C.J. Stroud might be going to the draft. Most likely going to the draft is a top NFL prospect.
I would if I was him.
Jr., he's still going to be in Columbus. There's a big quarterback question for next season. But for now, this has been the Lantern Sports post-game show for Jacob Benge and Gabe Burggraf. I'm Casey Smith here at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, signing off. Until next time, take care.